Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from RAU'S IAS Study Circle.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an analysis of the Hindu newspaper from UPSC perspective. Today we will discuss the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 20th January 2022, and the articles that we will discuss today are displayed on your screen. But before starting the discussion of today's newspaper, we have an important announcement for you. Now, in our weekly series of mains answer writing practice from the Daily News Simplified videos, the question for this week is highlighting the relevance of livestock in India, identify the challenges that are faced by this sector, also suggest possible measures to revamp this sector, and you have to write the answer to this question in 250 words. If you post your answers on ELEARN platform before Saturday, your answers will be evaluated by the RAU'S IAS faculty team. Now let us start the discussion of today's newspaper. This article on page number 1 is related to a new law that has been passed by the Haryana government, which provides for 75% reservation to the locals in the jobs that are created in Haryana in the private sector. Now this has started various debates regarding the economic implications of this move of the Haryana government, the legal implications, as well as what would be its impact on promoting the regionalism and effecting the cooperative federalism that exists in our country. In this regard, let us look at various aspects of this new law and what are its implications generally, which are important for us from the exam perspective. Now, this law has already been challenged in the Supreme Court, and the next hearing will take place in the month of February. However, for now, it is important for us to understand the implications of this law, including the economic, social, as well as legal implications of creating such a law which provides reservation up to 75% to locals only. And the points that we discuss here can be important for us from General Studies Paper 2 point of view. Now, it is not just Haryana, but states like Andhra Pradesh have also embraced this policy of providing reservation to the locals in the employment that is generated within these states, and this is known as locals first policy. Now, besides Andhra Pradesh and Haryana, other states like Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, and Gujarat are also contemplating providing reservation to the locals in the private sector. However, fears have been raised that such policies will go against the idea of One India, and it will hurt our collective interest and will promote regionalism, which can be detrimental to the issue of cooperative federalism. Now, looking at the economic implications, the economic survey of 2016 and 17 had highlighted that the annual work-related migration has increased to around 9 million, and it benefits the Indian economy. However, such locals first policies by different states like Haryana or Andhra Pradesh, and if other states also embrace such policies, it might hurt the economic benefits that the Indian economy is getting because of work related migration in the Indian economy. In this regard, the economic survey has said that the work related migration is a tool to reap demographic dividend and promote balanced regional development or inclusive growth. Now, in India, the northern states of India are mainly seen as labor surplus states, while the southern states are seen as labor deficient states. In this regard, in the labor surplus states, these are the states that are yet to reach the demographic dividend state, and these have share of working age population which is likely to increase in the coming decades. While there are other states which have already passed the peak of the demographic dividend, and the share of working population is set to decrease in these states in the next 2 decades. And that is where the work related migration can be a very important tool. This is because the labor surplus states can export human resources to labor deficient states, while this human resource that has moved to these labor deficient states can then provide remittances for economic development of these states. Now, if we take this example at an international level, we are aware that the Kerala is one of the states which sends majority of the population to the Middle Eastern countries. And this is the population which has been sending back huge amounts of remittances, which has benefited the India's GDP. Similarly, even within India, when there are certain labor surplus states and there are certain labor deficient states, in such a scenario, if human resources migrate for work to these labor deficient states and send back remittances to their home states, then in this case, it can increase or improve the economic scenario of overall states in India. And that is why it is said that the work related migration can be a very important tool for balanced regional development. However, if the states will embrace local first policy or locals first policy, in that case, such work related migration might not take place or it might be discouraged in the long run and it might have economic implications. Now, besides the economic implications, it is seen that it might also have legal implications because it stands on the face against the right to equality that has been guaranteed by the Indian Constitution. Also, in the Article 19A, the right to reside in any part of the country has been provided, and right to choose any kind of profession has also been provided in the Article 19. And these kind of laws which provides reservation to the locals stand against these provisions of the Indian Constitution. However, the matter is sub judice, it is in front of the Supreme Court. It will decide in the near future what exactly is the constitutional validity of such laws have been created by the Haryana as well as Andhra Pradesh. In this regard, the Supreme Court itself has raised concerns that such policies may lead to economic and social fragmentation of India. Now, besides the economic and the legal implications, it is being said that it will also have political implications in the form of weakening of the spirit of cooperative federalism, which is important for the functioning or smooth functioning of the Indian federal structure. Finally, it has been highlighted that it might also have various social implications. Now, this is because India is a diverse country in terms of languages, religions, and cultures. In this background, if work related migration happens, it leads to intermingling of different sections of the society in terms of intermingling of languages, cultures, as well as religions. And that is why it is said that such migration promotes national integration. However, if such migration is discouraged because of the regionalistic policies or locals first policies by different states, it might hinder the process of national integration. You might be aware that even in the case of the All India services or the civil services that is conducted by the UPSC, it is said that the cadre policy leads to national integration where a person from North India or a person from South India can be posted in different kind of states which speak different kind of languages. That is why the civil services is seen as one of the tools for promoting national integration. That was said, or that was the idea when the civil services were created at a national level. So similarly, we see the work related migration can be seen as an important tool for national integration. So in this regard, let us look at what are the benefits and the disadvantages of such policies of providing reservation to the locals in private as well as public sector. Now, first and foremost, it is said that it might provide economic opportunity to the local population because some of these states are witnessing huge levels of unemployment. And it is said that if such economic opportunity is provided to the local population, it might lead to improvement in the status of the vulnerable sections and the reserved categories. However, on the other hand, a disadvantage that is highlighted is that it can lead to social tensions and it might promote regionalism, which can be detrimental to the national integration. Because if such policies are implemented, then migrants from the other states will not be seen in good light. And that is why it might lead to tensions with the migrants from the other states that already have been seen or witnessed in different parts of India. For example, few years back, there were tensions related to UP and Bihari migrants in Maharashtra. And that is why such local policies or reservation to locals in the private and the public sector can lead to policies which might lead to social tensions. Then a benefit that is highlighted at times is that it prevents unnecessary migration to the other states of the population. However, it is sometimes said that such narrow looking or the policies which have a narrow outlook hinder the process of national integration and stand in violation to the larger constitutional goals of national integration. Then it is said that the reservation in the jobs will improve the overall socio-economic conditions of the large section of the state's population because it might lead to improvement in the employment situation in the state. However, it is not a guarantee that providing such reservation is necessarily going to increase the level of employment because that also depends upon the job creation in that particular state. However, as a disadvantage or negative side of such policy, it is said that it stands against the right to equality, right to reside and settle in any part of the territory of India, and right to practice any profession and to carry out any occupation, trade, or business, which has been provided in various articles like Article 14, Article 19(1)(e), and 19(1)(g). Then, regarding the benefit, it is said that it might create stronger bonds among the citizens of the state, and this can help in reducing the communalism that Indian society faces at times. However, it might dissuade the private sector investment and harm the economic interests of the state in the longer run. Then it might lead to increased spending in such states. However, it is said that it would prevent flow of remittances into the poorer states of India and hence might promote regional inequality. So overall, these are the implications, although there are certain benefits, but in the long run, the disadvantages are likely to outweigh these benefits that are associated with locals first policy or locals or reservation to locals in the private sector as well as public sector in these states. Now, this law has already been challenged in the Supreme Court, and further improvement or developments will be known when the Supreme Court provides a judgment related to this law. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 6 is related to the urban local bodies. In this line, we all are aware that the urban local bodies and the Panchayati Raj institutions are sometimes said to be the third tier of government that we have, because we have central government at the top level, then we have the state governments, and then we have these urban local bodies and the Panchayati Raj institutions. And the topic of urban local bodies becomes important for us from General Studies paper 2 point of view. In this regard, the Reserve Bank of India has highlighted in a report the state of finances and the study of budgets of 2021 and 22, and it has highlighted that the third tier of the government, that is these urban local bodies and the Panchayati Raj institutions, played a key role during the COVID-19 pandemic because these were the bodies that were at the front line in handling the issues that were generated because of COVID-19. And because these bodies were at the front line in combating the pandemic by implementing various strategies, this led to severe strain on their finances because of increased expenditure and reduced mobilization of funding from various sources because of the various lockdowns that were imposed. And that is why let us first look at what has been the observation of the Reserve Bank of India's report regarding the finances of these municipal bodies or the urban local bodies. And after that, let us look at what are some of the issues associated with the functioning of the urban local bodies in India. Now, the Reserve Bank of India's report has highlighted that the finances of these third tier governments were impacted during the COVID-19 because of restrictions that were imposed on the movement of the people. It was because of the provisions of goods and services that were to be provided by these urban local bodies because of the lockdowns that were imposed, because these were the bodies which needed to take care of the restrictions that were imposed and all other kind of responsibilities. Further, these are the bodies which had the responsibility of ramping up health infrastructure at the city level. And finally, these bodies also had to take measures to protect the livelihood and also focus on the vaccinations of the citizens during a very short span of time. And all these factors severely impacted the finances of the urban local bodies or the third tier of government as they are called. In this regard, let us look at what are the major revenue sources of the urban local bodies. The first source is, of course, the tax that is imposed by these bodies, which include the property tax, octroi, tolls, as well as water charges. Then the next major source of revenue for the urban local bodies is non-tax revenues, which include fees as well as user charges. And finally, the transfers are also made by the central government and the state governments, including the finance commission at the central level and also the state finance commissions. And if you look at the expenditures of these urban local bodies, these include administrative expenses and the developmental expenses in the form of public services that are provided by these urban local bodies, which include water, sanitation, roads, education, waste management, etc. Now, because the pandemic led to the strain on the finances of these urban local bodies, the report of RBI highlights that various steps were taken by the municipal corporations to fill this resource gap. In this regard, it led to reduction of non-essential expenditure by these bodies, which was one of the measures that was taken by the municipal bodies. Then they also focused on mobilizing additional funding from borrowing by issuing municipal bonds, that is, they've tried to borrow from market. Another source of resources for these municipal bodies were the deposits that were provided by the state disaster response funds. Also, there was issuance of COVID bonds by these municipal bodies, as well as they focused or dependent upon the donations and the contributions that were provided to them from various trusts and organizations in this regard.
So this was the overall assessment of how the local bodies functioned during the COVID-19 pandemic. What were the issues that they faced during the COVID-19 pandemic in the form of the financial strain? And lastly, what were the measures that were taken by these bodies? In this backdrop, let us look at what are some of the general issues that are faced by these urban local bodies. Now, if you look at the issues that are faced by these urban local bodies, it is sometimes said that these bodies face the issue of three Fs. And these three Fs represent the funds, the functions, and the functionaries. In terms of funds, it is sometimes said that these urban local bodies or municipal bodies face the issue of paucity of finances. This is because these bodies are not able to earn a lot of revenues from the taxes that are imposed by these bodies. Also, there has been lack of or there has been meager transfer of funds from the State Finance Commission as well as the central government. And also, they have not been able to generate revenue from the local taxation. So this is what is leading to paucity of finances for these local bodies, which represents the first F, that is the paucity of funds. Second issue that the municipal bodies face is that India is witnessing rampant urbanization. This is because of the rural urban migration, and at times this is leading to unplanned urbanization, and these municipal bodies are not capable enough to handle this unplanned urbanization. And that is the second challenge or issue that is faced by municipal bodies in India. Third issue that is faced by these municipal bodies is the excessive control of the state governments, which represents the second F, that is, there is lack of devolution of functions to these urban bodies or urban local bodies. Second F is represented by the functions, that is, there is excessive control of the state governments on these urban local bodies despite the constitutional provisions that have been provided in the Indian Constitution. This is because there are certain voluntary provisions that have been provided in the Constitution regarding the urban local bodies, which depend upon the state governments to transfer the responsibility on these urban local bodies. And as such, not many important functions have been transferred to these urban local bodies by the various state governments. Further, these local bodies are at times dominated by bureaucrats and not by the people, as was envisioned in the 73rd and the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act while creating the Panchayati Raj institutions as well as the urban local bodies. Now, the main idea of creating this third tier of government was to increase the participation of the people at the grassroots level. However, that has not happened, and these bodies have been dominated by not by the people who have been elected at the ground level, but they have been dominated by the bureaucrats in this regard. So that is also one of the issues that these municipal bodies face. And lastly, if you look at this third F that is related to the problem of municipal bodies, it is regarding the lack of skilled functionaries. Now, if you look at the responsibilities that have been provided to these urban local bodies, these include sewage management, provision of providing water supply, electricity management. All these issues are now responsibility of municipal bodies. But these bodies do not have enough skilled functionaries to handle these issues related to waste management or, let's say, providing sanitation and water supplies. That is why the third problem that these municipal bodies face is related to the functionaries. So the three Fs include funds, functions, and functionaries. And last but not the least, the main objective of increasing the people's participation has not been seen in the functioning of these urban local bodies. So these are some of the common issues that are faced by various municipal bodies in India or the urban local bodies in India. In this regard, the RBI has recommended that functional autonomy should be provided to these civic bodies, and their governance structure should also be strengthened. And this could happen by empowering them financially through higher resource availability. And in this regard, the second ARC has also recommended that there should be a clear-cut demarcation of functions of each tier of the government. And that is how, if you provide increased funds, improve or devolve the functions to the appropriate level at the urban local body level, and also if there is provision and improvement in the skilled functionaries at the urban local body level, the urbanization process can be streamlined and the various problems that are faced by these local bodies can be solved and they can be made more people friendly. And that is how the goal of the grassroots democracy can be achieved if these three issues of the urban local bodies are solved in the first place. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 1 is related to the issue of deputation of the cadre services of All India services. Now, we all are aware that the All India services like the IPS, the IAS, and the Indian Forest Services, these are recruited by the Union Public Service Commission. And that is how they are recruited centrally. However, these are posted in the states, and that is why a cadre is allotted to these services personnel. For example, the cadre is allotted to IAS officers, the cadre is allotted to IPS officers, and the cadre is allotted to Indian Forest Services officers. Now, the issues related to transfers, postings in different districts and departments lies with the state government in this regard. And at the same time, as the central government does not have officers of its own, these officers from the state cadres are deputed in the central government ministries at times for the functioning of the central government. And that is why the state governments have to send the personnel of the IAS, IPS, and the Indian Forest Services to the central government on deputation for the functioning of various departments of the central government. So this is how the overall functioning of the All India services in India takes place. In this regard, the central government has now proposed certain changes to the IAS Cadre rules, and this has become an issue related to federalism where the state governments are opposing this move of the central government to amend the rules related to deputation of the All India services officers. Now, this is a news in transition because a final decision is yet to be taken by the central government in this regard, but even the proposed move has been opposed by various state governments as infringement on the rights of the states under the federal structure that is presently existing in India. And the points that we discuss here can be important for us from General Studies Paper 2 point of view in the topic governance and polity. Now, what exactly is happening here is that the union government is now planning to acquire for itself overriding powers to transfer the IAS and IPS officers through central deputation. And while doing so, the central government is going to do away with the requirement of taking the approval of the state governments. So, the requirement that the state governments need to approve the deputation of any officer from the state government will be done away with if these proposed amendments are implemented by the central government. And in this regard, the Department of Personnel and Training or the DOPT has written to the states that the union government is proposing to amend Rule 6 of the Indian Administrative Services Cadre Rules 1954. Now, what is the present rule and what are the proposed amendments? Let us look at them. So, if you look at the present rule, the officers have to get a no objection clearance from the state governments for central deputation. That is, state governments also have a kind of say in the deputation of the officers from the state into the central ministries. In this regard, the states have to depute the All India Services officers, including the IPS officers, to the central government offices at any point. It cannot be more than 40% of the total cadre strength. So let's say if a state has a cadre strength of 100 of the IAS officers, it cannot depute more than 40% of these officers or more than 40 officers as deputed officers at the central government level. However, now the central government is proposing to change these rules of deputation of the cadre services. Now, the central government in this regard has stated that it wants to amend these rules because the central government is facing shortage of enough All India Services officers in the union ministries, and that is why it is proposing these amendments. Further, at times it has been seen that whenever the central government has proposed the deputation of any particular officer, the state governments have been blocking the deputation of such officers into the central ministries. And this confrontation was visible in the case of West Bengal, where the state government refused to send an officer on deputation, which was demanded by the central government. And that is why the central government is now proposing these amendments. Now, the first proposed amendment is that if the state governments delay posting a state cadre officer to the central government and does not give effect to the central government's decision within a specified period of time, the officer will stand or shall stand relieved from the cadre from the date as may be specified by the central governments. So, the need of getting a clearance letter or no objection letter from the state government will be done away with if the state government is trying to delay the deputation of a particular officer. That is why the time limit will now be proposed by the central government for sending a particular officer on deputation to the central level. Further, we have seen that the strength of the deputed officers cannot be more than 40% of the total cadre strength of a particular state. However, now the central government has proposed that it will decide the actual number of officers to be deputed in consultation with the state. And in this regard, the state will have to make eligible the names of such officers. So this upper limit of 40% will now be done away with. That is the proposed change. Further, in this regard, in case of any disagreement that happens between the state and the central government, the matter shall be decided by the central government and the state shall give effect to the decision of the center within a specified period of time. So this is the principle of federal supremacy that the central government is using to bring about these amendments in the cadre rules. That is, in case of any disagreement, the central government's order will prevail against the will of the state government. Further, the government has also said that in specific situations where services of the cadre officers are required by the central government in public interest, the state shall give effect to its decision within a specified time. So these are some of the proposed changes which will reduce the powers of the state government, that is the power of providing clearances to the officers which are called for deputation by the central government, and also this particular limit is also going to be waived if these amendments are accepted. However, as we all are aware, these are seen as infringement on the rights of the state, and that is why various state governments are opposing it and are saying that these are against the spirit of cooperative federalism. These kind of amendments infringe the principle of federalism and are seen as encroachment on the powers of the state governments. And some of the states have said that such amendments unilaterally mandates the state governments to make such a number of officers available for deputation as are prescribed under the Central Deputation Reserve, and the say or the right of the states is no more existing if such kind of amendments are accepted. So this is an ongoing issue. Further developments will take place in the coming days, and as and when these rules are, if they are accepted, there will be a lot of articles in the newspapers related to what are the likely implications of such kind of rules. So let us wait for these articles to appear in the newspapers. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now this article on page number 4 tells that there is dip in the eastern swamp deer numbers. That is, the population of the swamp deers has fallen in the past few years, which has been attributed to floods in the Kaziranga National Park, where these swamp deers are endemic. In this regard, let us look at what are the key features of the Kaziranga National Park, and also some information related to some important wildlife sanctuaries and national parks of the state of Assam in northeastern part of India. So if you look at swamp deer, the eastern swamp deer is endemic to Kaziranga in the Assam state. Regarding Kaziranga National Park, you should note that it is a national park since 1974. It is also a tiger reserve and UNESCO World Heritage Site, which was designated in 1985. Besides the status of National Park, Tiger Reserve and UNESCO World Heritage Site, it has also been recognized as an important bird area by BirdLife International. Further, it is home to the largest population of one-horned rhinoceros. However, if you look at the density of the population within the spread of the national park, the Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary, which is close to Guwahati, has the highest density of one-horned rhinoceros in the world, which is followed by Kaziranga National Park. And the focus of conservation efforts in this national park has been on preserving or conserving the big four species, including rhinoceros, elephant, Royal Bengal tiger, as well as Asiatic water buffalo. And if you look at the national parks of Assam in the northeastern part of India, important national parks include the Manas National Park, the Orang National Park, Kaziranga National Park, the Buracha Pauri Laukowa Wildlife Sanctuary, Pobitora Wildlife Sanctuary, and Dibru Saikhowa National Park. So these are the important national parks of Assam which can be important for us from the prelims examination perspective. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article in the text and the context section has been taken from the archives of the newspaper, and this particular article, that is Here is Why the Electoral Bond Scheme Must Go, was published on 26th March 2021. In this, it talks about the issues related to electoral bond scheme, and we have covered the various issues associated with the electoral bonds in the DNS of 26th March and 9th March 2021. Accordingly, a link to this video will be provided where we have already analyzed this article in detail, and this has particularly been in news because of the elections that are announced for the states of Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Goa, and Punjab. That is why this is again in news. So that is why you can go to that video, and the link is there in the description box, and the timestamping has also been provided. So you click on the link and go to the video and revise the issue of electoral bonds scheme from the mains examination perspective as well as from the preliminary examination perspective. With this, we conclude today's discussion, and this is the question for the day.